Well, good morning, everybody. Before we get started today, I just want to ask for your help on something. My microphone, which I've had for a couple years here, has finally quit working, and I need to get a new one. I do a lot of travel, as you know, and do a lot of these recordings on the road. So the microphone I need to buy needs to be of really good quality, but able to kind of travel well, like in my book bag next to my laptop as I go around. So if you have any suggestions on great microphones for recording stuff like this, drop them in the comments so I can go shopping because I do need to get a new microphone. All right. After asking for your help here, I got to talk about two big things that have kind of caught my attention. And the first one's kind of fun. The second one is a bit more worrying. You're looking at a map of our hazards this morning from the National Weather Service. And this color that dominates the screen, this one in through here, would be fog. Now, that is not to ignore at the beginning here the ongoing flood threat that's through parts of the South. We're going to talk about this in a second. But I just want to talk about something I get asked a lot about, and that is this kind of rule of thumb that 90 days after a fog, you get a rain. And it's one of these neat things in atmospheric sciences where a lot of folks know this. I've even gone to farms and they've got written on the barn wall the big winter fogs and then when the big rains hit in spring. And it's one of these great kind of, I would just call it a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that's because 90 days from today will be like late April, right? And that's typically a very stormy and wet time of year. I mostly hear that but I mostly hear that story from folks that are throughout the central part of the United States east. So it's, it makes sense only because that's kind of how climatology works. We have a pretty wet springtime here in the U.S. So this is yet another day of just incredibly dense fog across the country. And I just want to talk to you a little bit about why. This is what our snowpack looked like back on the 19th. So we were kind of at the end of the snowy time period. We brought the snow to the Mid-South. We had this deep pack here after two blizzards that rolled through parts of the Midwest. And we've been looking a lot lately this week at the western U.S. snowpack. So I'm going to kind of leave this alone right now. We'll come back to that in a second. But this is what's changed. All that mild air that's come flooding in, look, we really kind of eaten away at that snowpack. This is the most recent map. This is the one before it. And so there's a lot of liquid in this snow that's melting. That's one positive impact of it, although it's messy and slushy and disgusting. It's moisture. And the second thing is that snow, as it melts, is helping to saturate the lower atmosphere. And at night, when the temperatures drop, you can quickly hit your dew point temperature and go and continue to cool, which means we're just super saturating the lower atmosphere. So it's about snow melt. The next thing is this. I saw an interesting tweet from the National Weather Service out of St. Louis talking about how it's been, I think, nearly 90 hours since they've seen the sun because of the fog. And it will be fun to watch this map change. It's on my website, ag-wx.com, agweather.com. And I just always have a running map that looks at what's called cumulative downward solar flux. So in other words, over the last month, up until yesterday, it'll show you sunlight compared to average. So these bluer colors, the deeper the shade, the more clouds we've had. And then here, this would be the more sunshine we've had. So it's kind of interesting to look at this. Where we've got flooding going on now, we actually, before this, had quite a bit of clear skies and warm conditions at times and really pleasant winter. Take a look at Florida, though. Very, very wet and a lot of cloud cover, and they've missed several days of good sunshine. Same thing for the West and a big section here, the Midwest into New England. I think it's kind of fun to look at this. This map is much more exaggerated on the color bar when we get into summer. Because during winter, to be able to accumulate a lot of the solar flux or watts per meter squared, of visible sunlight is hard in the winter because of low sun angles and short days. So we'll just keep an eye on it. It's kind of a fun metric to look at. Now, lately, we have been talking about the slow progression of this high pressure cell farther and farther to the east. And as it's done that, there's been a frontal boundary on the back side of this that's been just having tons of moisture pumped into it. And as a result, it has really just, hit parts of the country very hard with rainfall. Now, I make these maps every morning at about to 12:30 in the morning, and they have data on them through 12 a.m. So it's a 7-day map, and it just shows how much rainfall fell through that time. And as you take note here, parts of Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, now into parts of Alabama. So down here, we've had several locations that have picked up more than 6 inches of rain, and the flooding in this part of the country has been quite bad. We'll get a new drought monitor in a couple of hours, and because some of this rain did hit before the Tuesday deadline, we should probably expect to continue to see better numbers in here. And we'll kind of check tomorrow some of our bigger metrics on drought situation across the country when I have all that data in. Elsewhere, you can see in the last week the heavy precipitation that's coming to coastal Washington, Oregon, Northern California, and then the flooding that we had down in San Diego, plus great rains that come into parts of Arizona as well. This has been a very, very dry region. But just thinking about all of this, I want to talk to you about something. This is my second thing that I'm finding quite important. There was a tweet that went viral yesterday. I didn't ask for permission to show it, so I'm not going to show it. And I also don't want to publicize it in that way. But I don't know if it was just an attempt to get eyeballs on it. But it sounded very credible, and it just is not. And what you're looking at here is a map of our 30-year normal precipitation. And in this tweet, there was a call for people in California to leave the state right away because of what she called an atmospheric river event, which is what we do call them. But she, there's a kind of a way of writing it where you put A period, R period, and then some people follow it with a K, so it looks like the word A.R.k. And we've been talking about a Pacific jet extension for a while. And the question is, according to her tweet, are we going to be getting just like biblical amounts of water into California? She's calling for hundreds of feet of snow and hundreds of inches of rainfall, and made the statement that it'll fill the whole of the Central Valley of California. And it got a lot of hits. I mean, I think this morning I checked it again. It was approaching 2 million views, and numerous colleagues of mine that are a bit more sound-minded about what they put out there in terms of Twitter are like, where? It's unfounded. Now, why have I left you on this map for a long time? I just want you to see what normal precipitation looks like annually. So what she was calling for was over 100 inches of rain in a place that on average gets, look at the Central Valley of California here. We don't get that. These numbers are much smaller than that. Even the wettest spots in the country, like the Olympic Mountains or the Cascades or parts of Northern California, coastal Oregon, Washington, these values, there's very few places in the country that are capable in an entire year of getting over 100 inches. Now, we can do it. It does happen, but it happens in places where it happens routinely, which means the landscape is already adjusted to it. The drainage is there. Now, that's not to say that something isn't going to happen. We've been talking about it, right? But I want to make sure that we just see it in a very healthy context without being blown up and overrated. So this is what we're paying attention to. The fear was put on this massive flood that was going to hit the Central Valley of California. I just want to tell you what happened last year when we were almost tripled up on snow in parts of the Sierra Nevada mountains, multiple systems that came through. There were spots in Utah that had 900 inches of snow at the end of the season. And if you want to think about what it takes to flood the Central Valley of California, all of that, and what we got here was the Tulare Basin flooding. Now, that's not to minimize this. This was bad. And by the way, it's still there. There's still flooded farms down in the Tulare Basin. This is in Southern California. But I just want you to understand that this is just one, very small part of California's Central Valley. It's right in here, and I know the map went away, but she made a claim that this whole thing was going to be underwater. And there's no foundation for that. So it's just a kind of a request that we be good consumers of that information. And when it's BS, call it BS. And to be honest with you, I had numerous people sending me messages. I got text messages and I got emails and folks on Twitter just saying, what is going on and is this any real? And I love it. Anytime you see that, and if you want a bit more sound advice on it, you just message me. I'd love to talk about it. Okay, here we go. This is the actual thing, though. This is the jet extension that we're going to be talking about for a while. And it's coming off of Japan right now, with wind speeds here that are easily eclipsing 200 miles an hour, and it is going to extend to the West Coast. So yeah, there is this. We've been talking about it. But what's it really look like? Well, one of the great places to go get this information, there's an outstanding website that it's for the Center for Western Weather and Water Extremes. And what they do is they publish a forecast using the models, which we use, on atmospheric river events, and they classify them, all right? So you go from AR1 to an AR5. Now, it's the AR4 and 5s that we had last year that can sometimes come through and produce a lot of flooding, and they can add a lot of snow. Hundreds of inches of rain, no. Hundreds of feet of snow in a single event, no. So we want to know what this one's going to be. So as we get through the end of this month, excuse me, and the very end of it, we're starting to see here that there's an atmospheric river event where the probability of getting up to AR3 is looking to be about 10 to 20%. See, here's the probabilities. If this was spiking up to like here, then we'd have to be talking about I mean, it's still not what her tweet was about, but something much, much more substantial. Can you see the categories here? That would be the exceptional, the AR5. And so they're expecting this one to peak out about half of that. So it's a moderate strength event. Now, it's just, we're looking right here at this particular spot in California. We can move up and down the coast to kind of assess different areas. But when you see maps like I showed you earlier this week where it says the risk of heavy precipitation is high, this is not the National Weather Service saying build an A.R.k. It's, we're just trying to identify those areas that have a high risk of having flooding rains. Not Genesis chapter 7 type rains, but just flooding rains. So here's the National Weather Service new update from the 1st through the 7th. This is only a week 2 product. We expect the rain to start here before that, okay? And this is the risk that they've got for the strong winds, so moderate risk. So that jet comes in. We do have the risk of heavy winds or strong winds. And then, there will be snow added to like the Klamath Mountains and the Sierra Nevada and into the interior. That's what these strong zonal winds do in the West. But I think it's important that we don't add to it with things we don't know. That's all I'm trying to say here. Okay, what spurred it on? Well, during El Nino winters, when the MJO sweeps out of 4-5 and comes into 6, that helps elongate the Pacific jet. And then when it gets over here into phase 8-1, it retracts. And usually what the elongation does is make things warmer for the North America, which we've got now. And then when it gets into 8-1 and the jet retracts, that starts to make the jet stream more wavy across North America, and it gets colder. Now, the MJO is stalled out right now for a bit in phases 6 and 7. So that's why we're still talking about the jet extension lasting into early February. Had it just swept through here, this would have been like a 1-day event or a 2-day event. Instead, it could be a few days of having some stronger onshore flow, as you just saw in the CPC diagram, the 1st through the 4th. All right. So what does it look like? It looks something like this. I've been showing you that equatorial view. Let's do a northern hemisphere view, because this is a really common thing to see happen when we have an El Nino like this. So by Sunday into Monday, there's the extension from China through Japan, 200-mile-an-hour winds that extend all the way here, almost to the west coast. But as we talked about, before it gets there, it targets the northwest on the split. The rest of the country gets a drier go of it here. And the bottom part comes and just screams across the southern tier of the U.S. So it's the split in the flow. Any time of year, split in the flow leaves an entire area out of good atmospheric motion. And if it's not moving, it won't be making precipitation. It's just not the right setup. You got to have the catalyst of change from the jet stream winds to do that. So if we play through the 30th into the 31st, there it is. That's the extension coming into California. Now, if this were sitting right here, we would be talking about something a bit more different. Not what her tweet said, but that would be serious. That would be incredibly strong winds sitting over the top of this area that we have to be discussing. And it doesn't get there though, right? We just kind of notice there's stronger flow. The jet is, honestly, it starts in Africa, comes all the way through parts of Asia, leaves and goes out into the open Pacific and gets here. But what I want you to see is by day 10, February 4th, into the 5th, 6th, and 7th, what do you notice? Now just take a look at the colors. The models have retracted that fast wind, which is why now the jet stream becomes a bit more wavy. It's hard to see here because it's blended, but it gets a bit more wavy and flow starts to come out of the southwest. That's what opens up the rest of the country to the chance at displacing the warm air and the chance for kind of driving in more precipitation eastern side of the Rocky Mountains. So I just want to do this to put this whole thing to kind of to bed for what we know today. All right. It is going to be an animation of the probability of getting an inch of total precipitation. And I'm just going to play you through the weekend, and we're going to stop it here midday Monday. Now that split takes the jet up here. That's why we primarily hit this part of the Pacific Northwest, the wettest conditions. And what you've got here, this is coming before the weekend even gets here. That's from around running around the big high here. Now, as we go into next week, this is next Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Do you see the flow sliding to the south hitting more of California? That's when the jet extension gets there. I'm just going to park it out there at 10 days, and I want to start to shift around. So here's the chance of 2 inches. I'm ready for, daylight saving to start again, because that won't happen to me at 6 a.m. when I record these. It won't flip to the new model run. Anyway, that is now the day 10 probability of 2 inches, and here's 4. So when you look at this, I just want to be clear that what we know about this right now is that it's not an event that's going to last for weeks. It's not an event that's going to deliver triple-digit depths of rain. And we just need to be aware that there will be local flooding, and there's going to be a lot of snow that gets added to this, but nothing to that nature of that particular tweet. So just want you to be careful with consuming that stuff. I also want to point this out. Who's going to be drier? This is over the next 10 days. Who's got the chance at getting less than 1/100th of an inch? And you notice, if you've been watching my videos this week, that is now lower. And the reason for that, and let's go up to less than 1/10 of an inch, is because as that flow comes across and makes the turn, well, just watch. Let's go back to the 1-inch amount and just show you what happens after the 4th. See how it fills in the midsection of the country? This is what happens when we finally start to get some southwest flow, kicking off low pressure systems here. And there's places in the midsection of the country that really need this moisture. I'm thinking about the northern plains from Montana, Wyoming, the Dakotas, Minnesota, Wisconsin, the UP, Michigan. This is a drier area over the last month. But that's what we're looking at here, precipitation ranks over the last 30 days. The other thing I want to follow this up with is the change in soil moisture. So this is what we had back on Christmas, and this is what we've got today. So all of that moisture that has come into this area is really working against the longer standing drought. So I'll be excited to see the new drought monitor in a few hours here. Okay, let's now get into some of the short-term stuff. What are we looking at for the next 7 days? Well, we know we're leaving this area out of the flow. The flow's coming into the coastal Pacific Northwest, and we have the high that's exiting here, delivering the rainfall that you see in this area. We do have the risk of some stronger storms. This is today's risk down here. Just a marginal risk of some strong storms. Tomorrow on the 26th, it's a broader area where we could hear some thunder. But I do want to note that the Storm Prediction Center did put out for the 27th an area down in Alabama that they're on the lookout for. And we can kind of see that by just watching the high-res NAM. So as we play this forward through the middle of the day today, here's our third kind of push in this area of moisture that we've seen this week. You can see to the south, kind of the frontal boundary that's lingering here, giving the risk of some thunderstorms. But this is now getting into the overnight hours into early Friday morning. There's a weak low. We watched it all week kind of curl up over parts of Colorado. That's why there's winter weather advisories out there. But you'll just need to keep an eye down here. This is 9 a.m. Friday, playing through the afternoon on Friday, getting into the evening hours. Now, this will be where I'll start watching on Saturday. That's the 27th. As that low kind of curls down here, you can start to see the frontal boundary pushing through, giving us the risk of the strong to severe storms. Now, during this time period, snow throughout the west to begin with, and then you see, take a look here in the northwest, going through Thursday into Friday, there's a frontal boundary that comes in, bringing some precip into coastal Washington and Oregon, and through the weekend, we're watching that flow split. So it's going up like this, it's going down like this, and that's why we don't see much in the middle. Okay, how about the GFS versus the European? GFS left, European right. We've already watched through here. So let's just pick this up on Saturday morning, Saturday midday, getting into the evening. Watch the low move through the mid-Atlantic. The GFS is still more aggressive on snow on the backside of this. That's still, I know we're only 84 hours out, but seeing how this comes in with how mild the air is still going to be a bit tricky. But this storm moves over the mid-Atlantic into New England, and both models are attempting later this weekend to deliver some snow into parts of maybe Pennsylvania, but more New York. Look at where it's coming in on the GFS here into parts of Massachusetts, Connecticut, maybe some white stuff in Rhode Island. I don't know. It all depends on how much warm air gets sucked off the ocean. But then as we get into the weekend, here we go. Monday, Tuesday, models have kind of flirted with a little clipper coming through the Great Lakes here. You can see it. But watch the flow change for the west. Here we go next Wednesday into Thursday. This is when the first of the kind of more powerful lows hit the west, coming into Friday. And that's just the beginning. Now, we are 10 days out, and the model is doing this. And I know folks that live down here are going, holy cow, what's going on? Nothing. This is out there pretty far in the models. We don't have a good signal on it. I'm just saying, watch the activity change in the western United States. But if we just kind of put this down to a couple of maps, this would be the next 7 days according to the European model. This is the next 7 days to the GFS. So European, GFS, same time frame. And I'll be honest with you, what I'm most excited about watching is when we get out there to that time when the atmospheric rivers get going, how well will our machine learning models do? This is GraphCast, and this is the Fuxi model. So this is 10-day total accumulated precip. Remember, when you're looking at this, the 100 to 300 millimeter rainfall amount is this color. So we can't see really heavy rains coming in here, But, you know, there is a difference right now in which model's wetter. So the GraphCast is much wetter here, and then with that last system, much wetter down here. So I'll be paying attention to these over the weekend as well. Okay, how about chances of snow? You did see the snow coming on the backside in the Ohio River Valley. This is the chance of getting an inch in the next 10 days. So we know about the snows in the west. We'll take a look at those more in a second. Not a whole lot going on in the central United States. Look at New England, though. Let's go ahead and step it up to 3 inches. New model run, of course. Let's go back, take you back out to 10 days. There we go. Chance of 3 inches coming through. There's Pennsylvania, New York, and much of New England. Let's go up to 6. Those numbers still there, about the 50% range. We take it up to 12. Now we're really going to be paying attention to the Sierra Nevada. So notice no 100-inch snowfall forecast currently being put out there by the European model. Even when I take this out 360 hours, I mean, the chances of getting 36 inches are, in the 50 to 60% range. So it's just important to keep all of this in context. We do know this. By day 10, we have a ridge that's pushing up from the Great Lakes to the Hudson Bay. Broad trough coming in the west. This switches the flow around, and that's why we see all of these week 2 forecasts showing up wet from the west into the center United States. And I want nothing more for this moisture to get up to this part of the country. We need that moisture up pretty far to the north. In the east, which needs a break, you're going to be getting more moisture as this all progresses forward out there beyond next week. Okay, temperature-wise, let's get toward the end of this video. There's Thursday getting into Friday. 70, look at that, in parts of Virginia on Friday. This is getting into Saturday and Sunday. Look at the warmth coming in this weekend across the northern tier of the U.S. We're going to have temperatures next Tuesday, up to 30 degrees warmer than normal. What a swing for the northern plains of the United States. And I don't have much different story for you when it comes to the longer range. Day 5 through 10, we still got all the cold air bottled up in Alaska, Greenland. Pacific jet extension maybe starts to wane by day 10, day 12, and that's when we start to see some of that cold air trying to get out. But just to let you know, the European model is very much in the same forecast boat as the GFS on the arrival of some cooler air. We may have to wait longer into February to see it. What did change, though, is that the MJO, which in the European ensemble is getting stuck here, we've now got more of the ensemble members tossing it out over here, which I told you earlier, that's a signal. When we get there, we may have to wait another 4 or 5 days, but there will be a big shot of cold air coming through in February. It's just no longer going to be like February 5th through the 8th. I think it's going to be later than that. Okay, my last thing I want to talk to you about South America, and I'm going to show you a fun map. This is the Yearly Vegetation Health Index change map. So I want to focus on South America. These colors represent better vegetation health index. We know that Argentina right now has its highest NDVI value in the last 20 years. It is the complete opposite of a year ago. The area that's been hit hardest with drought conditions and compromised crops has been the northeast growing area. And compared to average, there's just a slight lower value throughout places like Mato Grosso. Over the next 10 days, drier conditions with increasing heat coming through Argentina. We talked about that. This is not a problem yet. This could be interesting to see how this affects harvest progress in southern parts of Mato Grosso, whereas this big section to the north and east is expected to stay wet. The long-range models still want to keep this wetter, but I don't have the same kind of confidence I had earlier in the month telling you that this is going to really slow down harvest progress in the month of February. I don't necessarily think it's going to do that much to slow it down anymore. So we'll just watch it, and I'll put together some new long-range stuff for you tomorrow, including a new analysis on El Nino. We're going to look at some analog years in tomorrow's video, and so we'll hang out then. Thanks.